Hello class, welcome to this semester's final project. We're going to be creating a poster and a program cover. You're all familiar with what a poster is by this point in the semester, but I wanted to say what a program cover is in case you haven't heard what the term is before. So a program is just a small, usually flyer or essentially tiny magazine that's handed out at events that lists information about the events. So for example, at a musical concert, it may just list the songs that are going to be played, and then in the back it may have a biography of the musicians that are in there. Then it may have credits for the stagehands that help set everything up, and then maybe on the back it would have some advertisements or that sort of stuff. At a museum show, the kind that I've seen are usually just on a small flyer essentially that unfolds into a single page and will usually say a few things about a display that's occurring. Occasionally I have seen larger ones where they will be small booklets that are given out that talk a bit about specific pieces and a little bit about who owns the collection, that sort of thing. So in this case, we're going to be making a program cover for the poster that you will also be creating, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I wanted to show you some examples of what a couple of program covers look like before we get into it. So these are some posters that I made for the MJC New Music Concert. We've got this one, and we've got this one. I don't want to get to the wrong one. These are just some posters that I put together for the 36th and 37th Annual New Music Concert. And of course, since I did the posters, I was asked to do the program covers. They usually go hand in hand. Sometimes they don't because different printing companies will be used, but if you're called on to do it, you'll know what to do. So for the 36th Annual New Music Concert, let me find the matching one. Here we go, 36. For the most part, I just redid the elements that were in the poster, but I took some things apart and I moved them down to make space for it, because you'll notice that the program cover is essentially half a sheet of a normal piece of paper that's put on its side. So we have 8.5 on the long side and then about 5.5 inches on the bottom side, and then it was folded over around all the information in a small catalog. So you can see on the poster, it was this sphere design or this circle design with some of the little players that show up on the New Music Concert posters and flyers over the years. And then I just moved those guys down, and then I left pretty much the rest in as it was, with a couple of exceptions. You notice that I didn't put featuring or the admission, all that stuff. I only put the title, where it was, and what the time was. Essentially, if somebody took this home with them, they would have a record of what they did and what happened. This information on the poster, who was playing and all that, went on the inside of the program itself. And the same is to be said for the 37th Annual New Music Concert. In this case, we have some information about what's going on, where it is. And then on the program cover, again, I did not need all of that information. I was requested to put the MJC logo on it, and so I left space for that in both cases. In this case, there was more to be done because this side-to-side element was quite large, so it had to be rebuilt and shrunk down and all of that good stuff for everything. That is essentially the program cover. It's going to be a smaller version of the poster, but not the poster, just shrunk down. If you try to do that, it's not going to fit because the ratios are different. This is a full-sized sheet of paper. The program cover is actually just this half rotated around so that you can create a little catalog out of it. And so if you just try to shrink this, it's not going to fit. Everything will be the wrong size. So you'll need to do a little bit more than that. But it's perfectly fine to harvest elements out of your previous piece and put it in. I generally expect that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more. In fact, let's do that by looking at some of the student submissions from a few semesters so that we can get an idea of what I'm after on this. So let's pop right over to our examples. And I've got these organized by folders so that they don't get scattered everywhere. When you turn in this assignment, you're actually going to be handing in 5 files. So make sure that you label them correctly, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. But those 5 files will have different types of color profiles. So we'll have 3 posters, and those 3 posters will be in RGB, CMYK, so you'll have to do color adjustments, and black and white. Now, there's something a little bit tricky about that, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Since the black and white poster will go to print, it's probably a good idea to take it from the CMYK, where you've done the adjustments, and then make it black and white. Except in most versions of Photoshop, you can't use the black and white filters on CMYK. I believe you can on some of the newer ones. We'll investigate that. So what you do is, after you've adjusted everything for CMYK and saved out your copy, you're just going to open it up, convert it temporarily back to RGB, solely so that you can convert it to black and white. And we'll do that in a little bit. First, let me show you the examples. So here we have the poster for a band, which apparently is Baths, and then they were doing No Joy, and they had some things going on, and it was in a place in San Francisco called the Independent. Had the door open in the showtime, which I thought was good. One thing I wish that they had was AM or PM. That seems very important to me. But otherwise, this is a very nicely designed poster. Illustrated this entire thing in Photoshop. It looked quite nice. He converted it into black and white. And I thought what was quite good was when he did the program cover, he took the background, essentially, which he designed, and he planned for this so that he didn't have any surprises, and he had the hand sticking out of it. So on the one side, you had the person stoically having all this water crash across him, and on this other side, you can see he's been overwhelmed by it. I think that that's a brilliant solution to the design problem presented. How do you get these 2 images to match? And that was it. They have to in some way be themed. They don't have to be the same thing. As you can see, it's not the same person, but it should look like they are advertising the same event. And then we have the black and white version, which he did an excellent job converting on both accounts. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at a few more. Whoops, that is everybody's work from a while ago. But let's actually look at this one. Where'd it go? This one should be a good example. So we have the Shire presenting Full Moon Freaks, socks, and some other things. They have the time. This time is put on PM, entry fee, the Shire community space. Now, let me show you the program cover. And they did a good job doing it in black and white as well. And they did an excellent job in setting it up for CMYK as well as RGB. But let me show you the program cover. He took the small image he took this image and made it very small and placed it in. He put the required information. In this case, though, I believe this actually may be the first version he turned in, did not put down the text, which should have been up here. So that'd be the one thing that I change in this case. Once he's got this beautiful image, love the red circle with the text in it. Also put down what the information of the show. And he may not have had that at the time, now that I'm thinking back to it. This may have been a placeholder, essentially. And again, had it in black and white as well. So that's an excellent example of how these both match. And in fact, even if this circle wasn't here with this this player, it would still be a fantastic match. You've got the fish on both of them. It's excellent. This circle element, though, really ties it all together. All right. Here's for I usually get at least one of these a semester. I'm always glad to see them. Science night at the museum or the astronomy club. These are all quite good. This is another case where I wanted to show the relationship between the program cover and the poster. So we have the CMYK and the RGB versions of the image, and when this class is taught in person, I have them print out the CMYK version so that we can see it in person and what it looks like in front of us. Oftentimes, once something's printed, it does look different from the original on-screen image, so I always recommend printing it if you have a printer at home, even if it's just a low quality, just taping it to a wall, walking 10, 15 feet away from it, then turning around and looking at it to see what's occurring, what's happening. So we've got the poster, and then on the other side, we have this fantastic program cover. Now, notice we've just got plants. I'm not entirely certain that this is the same photo. I think that they're the same plants. This photos taken of it. Different night skies, and then a comet placed in both of them. And that's what he did to tie it together. I think that it was an excellent concept. Let's go ahead and close that up. There's, of course, also a black and white version of it in case it's going to a black and white printer. We've done that one. And let's take a quick look at this one. This one is a little more on point. This is for the Water Lantern Festival. This was a few years ago. And we have the program cover as well, both in black and white and in color. And you can see how in this case, it was a near identical pass, but no sun, because they decided to put more information on the program cover so that it was ready to go. And in doing so, they removed the sunset. So it's actually darker, or theoretically it's darker here. It's later in the night. Put a few more snowflakes. So one thing you may want to plan for is making sure that your elements are mobile between these designs. Otherwise, you're going to have to create something whole cloth if you only for some reason have flattened images. And that's fine too, but do keep that in mind, especially if you start running low on time. Let's look at a few more of these. This is one of my favorites. We have the readathon, and in the CMYK version, I thought this was interesting. In the RGB, this was hard to see. This was just difficult. In the CMYK version, when this went to print, it was actually quite a bit easier to see. My suggestion and advice, though, is still not use this blue on the screen because the tones were very similar. It's a little hard to see and read, ironically, for scene read, but he did this whole thing, made it look like a little storyboard cutout, or a little storybook cutout. Then he did another one altogether for the program cover. And you can see that the program cover and the poster are very, very, very similar. In this case, though, no reason to put that it was in the Hilmar Elm Elementary, because you'd be there when the program cover was handed out. So you just had the readathon, what time, and the date. So if you wanted to put this in a scrapbook or something, it's ready to go. And in this case, he was able to shrink down the image and reuse it. He then just extended the sky, extended the grass, because otherwise the image wouldn't quite fit. And then once he'd done that, he had enough room to put the text, and then he just put a couple of clouds to balance everything out. So poster, program cover. Here's an excellent one. Another one of my favorites. We have the Dia de los Muertos, which I think I've just mispronounced. Dia de los Muertos in Modesto. And the program cover, this again was a very clever design. The program cover allowed her to essentially just crop in so that the whole thing would fit again. And voila, the program cover was good to go. So depending on your design, you may be able to build the program cover very quickly, or you may have to rebuild the entire thing. So watch out for that. Here is a nice case of different images. We have the mosh pit, and this was a Twitch streaming community, and I thought that was a pretty clever thing. 24-hour live stream. And then for the program cover, just rebuilt it. Essentially took a similar set of images. I think that these were brushes that he used to create it, and then redid the text, and he was ready to go. So in this case, recreating it wasn't too rough. Keep in mind, though, that there is a lot to this. And if you decided not to work off of the planning assignment where you did all those thumbnails and roughs and all that good stuff, then you may want to plan ahead now to make sure that you can do a program cover with elements from your poster so that you don't have to redo everything whole cloth. Then again, you may be up for the challenge, but as we're in finals, you may not have the time, so do watch out for that. All right. We have a basketball cover. I thought that this one turned out quite nicely. It's for MJC, so it has the MJC logo. Here is a black and white version of the program cover. It was a little hard to read, but it still got the point across. Here's the color version. Notice this one's much easier to read, so you may want to experiment with what it will look like in black and white early on so that you can tell. Now, I like how this played out. They forgot to put the MJC logo, or may not have required it that semester, so do check whether the MJC logo is required for the program cover if you're doing an MJC event. There was enough space up here to put something. There's a lot of empty space, and it might have been good to put like men's basketball exhibition over here, and then we would have plenty of room to work with. But it still was a fairly successful execution. It printed very well when he printed it out, which was good. Here we have another excellent one. It was for a spring art show. It got a little hard to read where the white was on the white. Watch out for that with the text. This is a common issue. And the program cover for it is actually quite different. Let me bring up the color one. Notice that in this case, the same fine art logo was used in both of them to tie them together, and the same background. Other than that, it was a new photograph included in here, and these two are tied very well together. But this was built essentially whole cloth. The only similarity is the background, and this was recreated using brushes. Those brushes were used in this background as well. Just use the same brush, boop, 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 had that background, same font to tie things together. Got enough time to look at a few more. This was an excellent one. It was for the nurses' pinning ceremony, which meant that they graduated. And I just loved the illustration here. And here is his program cover. Now here you can see a slight issue with the program cover. Now if you weren't comparing these next to each other, it wouldn't matter, it would be fine. But because we are comparing them, we can see that this nurse is comparatively quite tall and thin. It's because he had issues reusing the design in a smaller space, since again the ratios are different between these two images. You can't just copy and paste them down. So he had to squash the nurse a little bit. He made it work, and I can see why he did it. He wanted to have the nurse's 50-second pinning ceremony go across the face. That was a really good idea. But when you look at them, you realize that one of these two is distorted, either squashed thin or stretched flatter out here, so that she looks like she's been pressed flat. Before, it wouldn't have looked that way, but now we've seen a different version of her, and we have to wonder which is the original. So do watch out for that. Oh, here's a good one. This one was for a cousin's birthday party. Max was turning 10, so he made these posters for Max to hand out to his friends, which was just absolutely adorable. I'm sorry, he was not turning 10, he was turning 16. I misread this. So do watch out when you're getting clever with fonts. It's possible to confuse your instructor. Here is his program cover, which, if I remember correctly, is told they just bent it in half and then had like what time the cake was going to be cut, what time opening presents, what time they were, it started, all that stuff right in there so that parents could know what was going on. It's pretty clever. In this case, it's an electronic and pizza, and it's pizza, video games, party, right? Clever. So on this one, Max. So how are these related? Well, they're both for Max. And in this case, he used more electronic gear. In this event, it was a battery. You can see that it's overcharged to its maximum power. Altogether, this was a lovely set. They're tied together in theme, but not much else. Oops. So in this case, we know that we've got like electronics. It says that it's a party. It's got 16. We've got electronics. It says 16. We know that it's a party. We're good to go. This alone tied everything very well together. So you don't have to reuse elements if you don't want to. And if you are looking at your roughs and you go, man, I had two good ideas, what do I do? Maybe use one for a program cover, and you should be set. All right, this was a lovely one as well. This is a horizontal poster. I wanted to show everybody that it's possible to make these. And we had the Memorial Weekend event and barbecue going on. This was from 2018. And then for the program cover, you can see that they just took a piece. Can I fit them both on the screen? Yes, I can. They just took a piece of the mountain range and then redid the font and the text. Worked beautifully. Just cropping in sometimes can be sufficient to produce your program cover. Each one of these is a treasure, so I love to show them off. We've got this wonderful one. It created an aged parchment effect. I do believe there's a little much text in here. It took me a moment to realize that the cult training was down here. I would have made this bigger so that we would have known immediately what was going on, and it says all that information. But that said, let me show you the program cover. In this case, before training, after training, we know that it is the horse training. In fact, this one I think provides the information faster. We have these going. It's the same kind of paper, the same kind of colors, the same kind of illustrations. It's not the same paper. It's not the same illustrations. It's not the exact same colors, but they work well together. They both match each other well, and that's how we fit the tone. The theme was created. I am probably going to go for another 10 minutes, so these are just all so good. I'm always so proud of my students for creating such wonderful work. Here we have a poster for a Discord meetup, so there wasn't a lot of information that needed to be placed. He did realize that he needed the time zone because Discord could be anywhere in the world. So they were meeting May 18th at 6 p.m. PST. So that matters. Now you know what time to meet up. Where if you're on the East Coast, you may want to know that it's in Pacific Standard Time. Now the program cover, very simple in this case. Shrank down some of the elements, cropped some stuff in, and then pasted back the little ship, and it was good to go. I love the logo that he came up with. I think the whole thing worked out quite nicely. It also printed very well. Again, I can't stress enough, if you have a printer and you've printed out all of your papers that you've got to turn in, and so you know you've got the ink for it, go ahead and print out one of these so you can see what it looks like. It's also really good to have one around as a portfolio piece, just in case you have to put together a portfolio. It will be good to go and ready to roll. All right, here is a really cool illustration. I loved all the line work. I loved it. Had almost an Art Deco feel to everything, even though it was an anime character. It's adorable little cat ghosts. And then for the program cover, reused many of the elements, and notice that the process was removing this frame to give space, changing these corner pieces, see how they were wide so that they're flat and long, and then moving everything closer together, as well as a background on here was zoomed in on and cropped in. In fact, yes, it's been a while. I can't remember if he told me that it was another photo or not now. It's been a little too long. So these two clearly go together because it's the same elements again, brought together. Here's one for the Rio Carnival. I thought that this was quite beautiful. They got the idea for it and they just flew with it. And then they reused the head that they created and the flames and all of that good stuff and put it inside of a smaller square. Notice we're missing the blue line now. Everything's toned down, has the date and the time put in. Well, actually, in this case, it's all day, so you don't necessarily have to have a 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. if it's all day long. All right. Okay. Oops, same set. Sorry, just a second. All right, so here's a one for the Astronomy Club, and I liked this one. They had a horizontal poster for the Science Night at the museum, and then they had a vertical poster for the program cover. Now this is a bit stretched, and I would have preferred another shot, but they didn't have one. So they ended up just making do, and they kind of squished them in, and then they called it a day. It still worked out. If I hadn't seen this one, I would have thought that it was a stylistic choice. So it can work. You can make it work if you need to. Notice that they just cropped in on the background to create this. Actually, they squashed it a little bit. So don't do that. Just crop in and reuse the elements as you need to, rather than squashing things oddly. Try to keep the ratio the same between them by constraining it. If you're on an older version of Photoshop, Shift key to constrain a transformation. Otherwise, by default, it's usually not the Shift key. It depends on the version of Photoshop. All right. We have the poster here for the music department's electronic music concert. Thought that this was a great poster for an electronic music concert. And then for the program cover, we had something a little different. He went, I don't allow this anymore. It's a horizontal program cover so that it can be flipped over. From here on out, I require a vertical program cover to make it work. But in this one, he had a little horizontal one, which was kind of interesting. Again, this was, I thought, a beautiful structure for an electronic music concert. He had it in the Memphis style, so it had a real 80s vibe to everything. I really enjoyed it. I think that goes well with electronic music. Here is one that was hand illustrated, and I think that it worked out quite nicely. And it was the Hat in Time live orchestra. This was for live orchestra that plays electronic video game music. And then we have the program cover. Here it is in color. Okay, and you can see essentially just redid the whole thing in this smaller format. And it worked out. Here it is in black and white as well. And so when you do hand-drawn elements, sometimes you can just, do it again. Although you may not have time for that, so be careful. This is pretty time-consuming. I thought this one was very sweet. It's for the musical Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Very, very cute. And on top of that, he was able to reuse the elements. He just squished them, and I honestly didn't notice. But again, I don't recommend it. You can have so many strange distortions occurring. Notice he did not squash the musical notes, he simply shrank them down. He took a look at Rudolph, he tried it with a circle, he decided he preferred an oval, and then he decided that he wanted to smush the face down on it as well, so he just did. So he didn't smush the notes though. That was the only part they decided to kind of crush in using a transformation. And lastly, let's take a look at this one. It's another case of a different program cover and poster. Here we have the poster. He did Madison Square Garden and kind of put it in. I would have liked some more appropriate text. This was kind of tried and true. He showed throughout the semester he could do very amazing things with text, and then decided to keep it simple on this one. Here is his program cover. And for his program cover, here's the black and white, and here's the color. It's very desaturated in either way. I think it's actually easier to read in black and white. But you can see that it's a similar style. You have these silhouettes inside of a forest. They're just different silhouettes in different forests, but it's still pulls together. I also made sure to use a similar font between the two so that it would tie together nicely. So I'm hoping that gives you an idea of program covers as compared to posters. And now we're going to go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty of what this assignment is in the next video, and then talk about a few of the little pitfalls that can occur in it. So I will catch you in the next video.